You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where today we're doing something a little bit different. Instead of talking about cricket matches or cricket matches that are going to be played, we're taking a slightly more conceptual look at the game, focusing on everyone's new favourite format, the 100. To do that, I'm joined by Jarrod Kimber. How are you doing, Jarrod?
Very good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm getting by anyway. I should introduce myself too. I'm Jack Hope. Ross and Max can't make this one because we're doing it in the middle of the day on a Friday, and they have jobs. I mean, I also have a job. It's just a more flexible job. Right. Before we get into things, just a quick reminder that you can find us over on Twitter at The Cricket Pod. You should like and subscribe, leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on Spotify or iTunes, hit follow or subscribe as well. And we're on Patreon, patreon.com/The Cricket Pod. I think it's going to be a reasonably interesting chat. I mean, it's got the potential to veer off, and there is a small chance that the next half an hour is going to be the driest conversation anyone has ever had about the sport. Before we get into it all, though, Jarrod, have you been enjoying the 100 so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's school holidays for my kids, and so they're around a lot. So I see little bits of the 100, but yeah, I think it's been good. It's good to have cricket on TV every night. I think the women's cricket's been incredible. It is certainly, it's certainly the quality of women's cricket has gone through the roof, and so you can follow that as a proper tournament rather than just looking at it for a couple of players. And I've enjoyed the 100 as a general thing. I mean, it does what T20 cricket's supposed to do at a basic level, which is it manufactures close results.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it does feel faster than a T20 as well, or at least the IPL, which is the other T20 tournament that we follow quite closely on this podcast. Anyway, the whole concept of this episode, I suppose, is to be pretty cricket nerdy. In fact, it's probably the most cricket nerdy we've been on the show, and we're going to sort of hear your thoughts, Jarrod, hopefully over the next half an hour, about what we've learned from the 100 so far, and where it might be different as a format from its closest cousin, T20. So in really general terms, before we get into it in more detail, what are your thoughts on the 100 as a format and how it's been played so far?
I think teams are pretty confused by it. I think they spent a lot of time sitting around and talking about what the 100 would be, and then they came out and realized it's more like T20 than they understood. And that has probably caused them some mental anguish. I mean, I've noticed for the women, they're starting really, really slowly, for instance, which doesn't make any sense. And I was talking to, some women's cricket experts yesterday, and none of us could really work out why this was the case. Even with the men, we haven't had the sort of big epic scores that we were looking at, even compared to even some of the Blast games. So, I mean, the high scoring game in the UK in the last couple of weeks has been a Royal London Cup game. I think that's more fast scoring than most of the 100 games. And I think the women are outscoring the men. I think they might have the highest individual scores and some of the others, even with their slower starts. So it's been a little bit weird from that perspective. But I think you have to understand that the way that professional sport works, it's in some ways a lot more conservative than amateur sport. If this was amateur sport, a bunch of people would be like, there'd be one team that would be, sending a chicken to go out and open the batting, right? And, someone else would be just running down the wicket every ball trying to switch hit things or whatever. Professional sport, they come up with all these great ideas and everyone's like, ooh, I don't know if we want to use those. And I think that's what you've probably seen so far, is that sort of innate conservative nature of professional sport, which people see T20 cricket and the other 100, and they think, it's all, it's like, no, if this was a really attacking sport, people would already be scoring at 10 runs and over all the time and getting bowled out regularly. It's still quite a conservative. In fact, over the last couple of years of T20 cricket, you've got teams even being more conservative with the way that they are holding their wickets in hand now than they have been in previous moments in T20 cricket. So I think the teams are just maybe a little bit confused as to how this all works, which makes sense. I know it seems silly, but taking a ball off and over, allowing bowlers to bowl double overs, and the ability to take 20 balls off the innings actually does change it's like chopping off a section of the balance beam, and then in the middle just having an extra bit of the balance beam for no reason. I mean, I've been watching the Olympics, so that's the best I've got for you.
That's a good topical reference there. I mean, obviously, you sort of spoken a little bit about some of the rule changes there. I mean, what struck me actually is the scoring rate. So I was looking at the scoring rates in the men's competition versus the Blast, and they're actually lower despite the fact that they've got 20 fewer balls in the 100. And there are possibly some reasons for that. There've been a couple of iffy pitches from the point of view of scoring lots of runs, and we've only played 8 games, so Birmingham Phoenix getting bowled out for 80 is going to have an effect on the overalls. But I did expect it to be a little bit more explosive. Maybe looking forward, then, bearing in mind there are 20 fewer balls, what should teams be doing other than just swinging harder, or is it literally that simple?
I think watching the T10, I think there's a certain freedom that you need. Andre Fletcher is a lovely guy. I worked with him in St. Lucia. And I always felt that weirdly when he played T20 cricket, he was just way more conservative than he ever needed to be. He spent most of his innings, like he would slog the seamers a little bit at the start. The spinners would come in. He doesn't like spinners much. He would go into his cocoon. And then he would basically wait until he was there at the end and then start slogging again. And you watch him in T10 and you're just like, that's really what you want to be looking at here. And I think the better T10 teams, and we've only really had one tournament that's ever done it, but the better T10 teams really did look at it as a death situation.
Yeah.
And I don't think so far that is how these teams are looking at it. They're more looking at it as a T20 situation still. And I think it's really just being a little bit more blasé with your wickets. Now, the run rate thing could also be the fact that in the Blast, it is very, very unlikely that you're going to have 5 strong bowlers coming in.
Yeah, this was something I was going to pick up,
yeah.
but carry on. Yeah.
But there's kind of two things that what happens in franchise crickets in general. Depending on the quality of franchise cricket, the batting either drops off at number 6, 7, or 8, right? In the IPL, you want it to be 8, probably. International cricket, you probably want it to be 8. In franchise cricket, sometimes it can be 5. Like, it's hard to get really good quality number 5s because they travel around the world and make an absolute arseload of money, right? So you can get that, which allows then for that what you would call the sloppy T20 cricket, which is what a lot of the Blast is, a sort of a sloppier league that you see in some of the other leagues around the world as well. The New Zealand league is very similar, and the South African league could be very similar as well. What you might get here is the 100 is a slightly higher quality of cricket. We know that England has an incredible white ball array of talent. There's some really good overseas players, playing for these teams as well. And that might be it, that there is no weak 4th or 5th bowler, and that you can get away with a dodgy number 6 in Blast cricket without really any problems at all. You probably can't, from having a look at the 100 so far, I'm not sure you can. If you've got a dodgy number 6, one day he's facing Sunil Narayan, and the next day he's facing Rashid Khan, and even someone like Marchand Delanga, like Marchand Delanga is a really good fast bowler. He's legitimately fast, and in the Blast, you don't have to face that many Marchand Delangas, right? Yeah. Whereas there's a bowler of that kind of there's either a bowler of Chris Jordan's skill or there's a bowler of Marchand Delanga's speed that you're coming up against regularly. You used to play, if you used to go up against Gloucester, you used to have to go up against Andrew Tye and Benny Howe, and then you could kind of cut the slow ball bowlers, and then you wouldn't face that many good slow ball bowlers unless you went up against Ricky Clark and Jade Dernbach, and then suddenly every team's got a bunch of really good slow ball bowlers. And I think that might have something to do with it. But I do believe at the moment that, and this could be pitches related, as you said, it's only 8 games in. I think there's just been a bit of conservatism. They're still thinking about it more as a T20 rather than a T10. And perhaps the pitches have played a part. But I do think that the overall quality has gone up. And that usually, when the overall quality goes up, it usually tilts one way or the other in batting or bowling. And so in the IPL, it usually tilts towards batting. In the PSL, it usually tilts towards bowling. And it could just be a case at the moment where that has happened. But it's, as you said, it's so early. It's really hard to know.
Well, this was, when I was looking at sort of the numbers, this was one of the things I sort of speculated on. You see it in World Cups. Often the scoring rate goes down compared to the rest of the year as teams pick effectively their best bowlers and they don't rotate them. In England, I don't think it's a big secret that the strength of the white ball side is the batting, and that extends quite a long way down into county cricket. And if you take a group of the best batters and put them in the 100, and what am I trying to say here? Basically, when you concentrate the talent, the bowling quality goes up more than the batting quality as you go from the blast to the 100 is kind of what I thought maybe up. Another area that I think people haven't really talked about yet, and I wrote a short article on this, is power plays. Obviously, they're 11 balls shorter in real terms, but also as a proportion of the innings, quite substantially shorter. And if you compare it to the blast again, in England, teams tend to score quicker in the power play than they do for the rest of the innings. So cutting that down does appear to have had an impact. And then I mean, you mentioned that in the women's game, they're starting slower anyway. I don't know if you've noticed a dynamic around that or whether that's just early noise so far.
Well, one thing I know for sure is that power plays generally are much higher scoring in the last 2 overs than they are in the first 4.
Yeah.
We're basically cutting those off, aren't we?
Yeah.
So if you think about it, if you're a normal T20 opener, you might be like, if I'm 10 off 10 coming into the last 2 overs of the power play, and my partner's, 12 off 10. Between us, one of us is probably going to have a big over, take 15, 16 runs off an over. The other one maybe can take 10 runs off the other over and cash in there. Those overs don't exist anymore. So you don't have the ability to be 10 off 10. I mean, you look at someone like Jarrod Kimber, he looks already like a liability in this particular format just because he needs his 10 balls, right? That's not slagging him off particularly. That's just, there are players who need their 10 balls. Now, if the ideal opener in the 100 is Luke Ronchi. And for some reason, no team went for him, and I don't know why. Luke Ronchi's strike rate in the first 5 balls is 160. His strike rate after the first 10 balls is 160. And his strike rate in his career is about 160, right? Or the latter half of his career when he worked out what to do. He's perfect because he doesn't waste balls. Now, part of it with Luke Ronchi is hilariously that he's nervous. And he goes out there and tries to whack everything because he's shitting himself the whole time. But essentially, in that situation, Luke Ronchi is perfect for you. Whereas there are a lot of very good openers throughout the blast who need 5 balls, who need 7 balls, whatever. There's not, when you're in that situation, there is no catch up in this power play. So I think you probably got a fair point there. I also think that teams went for talent rather than particularly a T10 style of playing. So, Trent Rockets, I know that they're doing very well at the moment and looking like a very hard team to beat, but got a lot of anchors, the way that we would describe anchors in T20 cricket, like guys like Milan and Samet Patel and those sorts of players. They naturally slow you down a little bit. Joe Root as well. Like there's a lot of guys there, and there's a few teams that have that. I don't remember, even when you had an anchor in T10, I'll go back to Andre Fletcher because he does play like an anchor sometimes in T20. Those sort of players manage to work out how to score very quickly. We haven't seen that yet. And we have seen more of the middle overs knocking it around than I assumed we would have. I thought what you would get is you might get player takes 5 to 10 balls to get set, then goes. Player at the other end takes 5 to 10 balls to get set and then goes, because it's slightly different to the T10 format. At the moment, it seems like, you look at the Alex Hales innings the other day, you look at Darcy Short as well. You look at those sort of innings, they are not what you would have factored in for the 100, I think. And I think if that's the case, that teams are still thinking about it more in that other style. And as you said, you take away the power play, and then you add the depth of bowling, probably from the overseas bowlers as much as everything. But also, when you talked about that depth before of England batting in white ball cricket, that the Blast already had that. At a certain, what do they have? They have about 40, 45 guys who can whack the ball, right?
Yeah.
They maybe only had 20 or 25 bowlers who were of that kind of quality. But for 8 teams, that actually works out quite well. So
that's you've articulated there what I was trying to say and couldn't say earlier, which is
yeah. So the depth doesn't matter as much, especially when you start filtering the overseas players, right? And there's also, a lot of interesting decisions happened. I think, like for instance, George Munsey is not in one of these teams from Scotland. I don't know if I can't remember what the Scottish players, if they count as overseas or locals, but there was certainly a feeling of George Munsey is probably now looking at the way that a lot of these teams are going in the 100. The ideal sort of player you want, again, because he can start so quickly, straight away. So George Munsey, Luke Ronke, there's a few players out there that might have been completely ideal for this kind of tournament who aren't there, and even some like lower level players like that someone like Anton Devcic, who is not an elite player anymore in T20 cricket, but if you said to Anton Devcic just go out there and whack it, he probably would. And I think that we've probably just moved the needle slightly towards a few guys who are thinking batting rather than thinking whacking it. Yeah. I really do think that might change. You might get that they get liberated by this particular format. But again, we're like 5 minutes into it. So even if that's going to happen, even if someone like Samet Patel and Ravi Bopara, who are absolute anchors in T20 cricket, they might even be like, let's just hit this.
Well, I mean, I think it's a compelling point, and looking probably towards next year, next year or next draft, or whatever it is, the value of those players will fall if they don't start doing something. I mean, I guess you can group top order batters into a couple of categories: the guys that hit a lot of sixes and the guys that don't. And if you hit a lot of fours, that's okay if you've got a long power play to hit a lot of fours in, because once you pierce the infield, you get a four. If your trade is hitting fours, like it is for David Milan, like it probably is, although I haven't got the numbers in front of me, for Patel and for Ravi Bopara, if you have 11 less balls in the innings and they're the juiciest 11 balls, and you also have a shorter power play overall, then your skill, the ability to hit fours, is considerably less value versus somebody who can clear the ropes earlier in their innings. Another, just to labour the power play, because it's the thing I've written about, and it's sort of fresh in my mind. Power play specialist bowlers, and this sort of segues into another one of the rule changes, the white card overs. People were saying before the tournament that we were likely, or we could see, a lot of power play, or basically the power play specialists bowling out in the power play. I don't think we've really seen that yet. Is there a particular reason for that, or is it conservatism again?
This is one thing I don't think people probably understand that much. There aren't that many power play specialist bowlers.
Yeah,
it's not. You get them in the lower levels of cricket a bit, but that's basically because they're a red ball bowler and they can nibble it around a little bit. There aren't many sort of Jason Behrendorff, Shaheen Afridi bowlers out there. Vernon Philander has never had a particularly successful T20 career, for instance, despite the fact that he could also whack the ball. And I think that is because the ball the white balls in T20 cricket just do not last very well. They do not swing for a long period of time. Even if you're mishitting them, you're sort of clunking them and softening them up. And I think that, someone like David Willey had a very good record for a little period. You usually that's generally what happens. Someone has a good period for a little while. But unless the ball is absolutely swinging sideways, I'm not sure that is, or you are Shaheen Afridi or maybe Jason Behrendorff. But I don't think that teams, I could see how that could work. I could honestly see how, if you did have Jason, Shaheen Afridi is probably the best one because he is the best new ball bowler in the world. You have Shaheen Afridi and you just like, well, we're not worried about matchups because he's so good. So we're not going to worry about matchups. We're just going to bowl the first 4 overs with him. And then we're going to bring our best spinner on once we're into the middle order, if they're in that position. Again, though, that's a really, really aggressive move. And as I've said, professional cricket is not a aggressive place. It's a defensive place. Everyone's trying to protect their jobs. No one wants to do anything, particularly that out there. And if you look at it, it's a really interesting one because the Oval Invincibles are not. I said no, I don't mean them. I mean London Spirit are not doing particularly well. There's a bunch of different reasons why Rajasthan won the first IPL, but one of the main reasons was they just tried a bunch of stuff. And because they tried so many things, because Shane Warne didn't care because he was Shane Warne, that allowed them to basically stumble onto a couple of good ideas and win the title. That may not happen this time, but essentially that's because the other teams are sitting back, go, "Oh, we don't want to try too much. We don't want to do too much." And I think that might come back to it. The other thing I've noticed is that so far, and this is why it needs to be Jason Behrendorff or Shaheen Afridi for me. Or someone of that caliber anyway. Essentially, the second 5 balls when people have bowled back-to-back balls have always gone for more runs. Yeah. Now, I think there's a fallacy within that. So what most people say is, that's because you get to face the same bowler and you get to line them up, which is absolutely true and something that, I've certainly been saying for a long time in T20 cricket. But the other side of that is generally when we're bowling bowlers back-to-back, it's not a pre-plan. So I think Roloff might have done it at Lords in one of the more recent games, and it was because his first over went for 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it was. Right now, regression to the mean will tell you if his first over has gone for 4 or 5 in the power play, then his next over is probably going to go at 6, 7, 8. Right. So there's a natural thing there. So we are picking bowlers because they've gone for 1 low total, and expecting that to go over, but actually that's not how that works unless the matchup is completely dominant. So I think there's a bunch of different ways. So I think you'd almost be better off to go, no, we are going into this game and David Willey is going to bowl the first 15 balls unless in his first 10 balls he's already gone for 15 runs, right? If the ball's still swinging and everything's in his favor, you could do that. But I think, again, these are very punchy, aggressive ways of doing it. This is something that would be easier to do in something like the Blast or in one of the smaller leagues where the talent quality isn't quite at the same level. Also, these teams have gone out of their way to make sure that they are not matchup problems for the opposition. So chances are you're not going to have, if you've got a really good left arm swing bowler, chances are you're not going to have 2 batters who can't face left arm swing opening the batting together, right? That's not an accident. That's how teams are now put together. That will still happen at times, definitely. But I think that might have something to do with it. But the fact that so far that's when we have bowled the second 5 balls that have been slightly higher, I think is a big part of why teams are just a little bit more hesitant on that. But it would not surprise me going forward if you have a kick-ass seam bowler at the start that they just bowl 10, 15, 20 balls and then your best spinner comes on for the next 10, 15, 20 balls.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that happening. I think as well that because the batters don't switch around at the end of the 5 or the over, I think you've seen this a couple of times. You have had a batter stuck on strike effectively against a player that they just don't match up well against or not getting away for whatever reason. I mean, with Hales the other night, didn't he face 34 of 100 balls or something like that on the way to... He played a match-winning innings, I suppose, in those 34 balls eventually. But that's an interesting dynamic that I don't think teams maybe tactically have quite got to grips with yet, particularly with the bat. You've seen good batters stranded at the wrong end for a while. We had a few questions in from Twitter, and they weren't all about what we've learned. So I'm trying to stretch them or adapt them slightly into the kind of topic we're talking about. One's from Chris TB, who basically asks, how good do you expect Shamsi to be in the 100? But I think you can ask that with respect to how good spinners have been so far. And I think this maybe surprised me. They have been incredibly effective, I think, in the first 8 matches of the men's tournament and 8 matches of both the men's and the women's tournament.
Yeah, I don't think it didn't surprise me, and the reason is that English batters don't face much spin.
I suppose that's.
So I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but in first class cricket, Hyderabad is thought to be this incredible spinning wicket, and I think it has something like 25 or 22 or 28% of the deliveries bowled there are spin, which wouldn't have it in the top 50 first-class wickets around the world for the most spin bowled. So if you suddenly throw in, and not average spin either, like very, very good quality spin from around the world, and I think the England spinners have done quite well as well. So I think in that particular situation, I'm not surprised. The other thing is that the easiest way to doctor your wins is by having a home pitch that suits your team, right?
Yeah.
That is how T20 cricket works. For all the moaning about test match pitches being docked, nothing gets doctored. Nothing gets doctored more than a T20 pitch. Some of those wickets are hilariously bad. Chennai have been, just taking the piss for years with these kinds of wickets, right? And teams do it in different ways: faster pitches, lower pitches, higher pitches, slower pitches, whatever will suit their team. And I think that we have seen, because some teams have stocked up on a lot of spinners, we've certainly seen that as well. But again, it comes down to the fact that if you're a number 5 in blast cricket, you're facing, on a bad day, you might have to face, Mujib for 3 balls. And maybe Muhammad Nabi will come through and you're facing for 4 balls. And you get stuck at Essex versus Zampa or something like that, right? This is completely different. This is all the spinners in one area, huge percentage of spin being bowled. I mean, I thought at one stage last night that, Alex Hales was going to bowl his off spin. It got to the point where, it was quite clear that spin was so dominant on that pitch. That's how it was going to go. And I think that with that again, that brings other challenges. Now, Tabraiz Shamsi is a top quality bowler. He's hard to pick. Up until recently, and I'm trying to think, I think it was when Kuldeep Yadav tore through England in a couple of games, and I had a look, and like the left arm spinner who'd bowled the most in since 2005 in first class cricket in England was Brad Hogg, who I think had played a season or two. The second most left arm spin deliveries were bowled by Simon Kadich, who doesn't like to bowl ever, so I can't imagine he bowled that much. You had Ripon, the Dutch New Zealander, who occasionally appeared. Now have Lintott, who seems to have a typo in his name, but no one has corrected it yet. There aren't a lot of, and Zahir Khan played for Lancashire. There's still not enough that you would be used to it. So if you're not a well-travelled T20 batter, you're not going to be used to left arm wrist spin. And last time I checked, they bowl, I think, slightly less than 1% of the deliveries in T20 cricket. Now, you have to play a lot of T20 cricket to even find one in most countries. And, so if you've got one with the quality of Tabraiz Shamsi, you would expect him to do quite well. But he will be bowling into the sort of, England batters do like that sort of wide mid-on, mid-wicket arc. That's kind of how they've been trained over the last 5 or 6 years. He will be spinning it into that arc. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes specifically. But he's clearly a talented bowler.
Yeah, sure is. Just a few more questions from Twitter, and then I think we'll wrap up, keep it to about half an hour. Jainil Modi says, has the 100 format benefited bowlers better than batsmen with the 5 ball and 10 ball format, or because of the lack of overseas stars, I guess, is that a reason that strike rates are down?
We talked about this before, didn't we? I don't know if we know yet. I can see why. I think I would prefer to bowl 5 balls in a T20 game. Like if I'm a wrist spinner, I have the ability then to just completely mix it up. That one, I know it's not a huge amount, but that 1 ball less, I think, can come to my advantage. And then the opposite is if I'm completely on top of a guy who can't get off the strike, it's worth me probably having another bowl at him straight away rather than hoping he's back on strike in an overs time. I'm not sure how much that has gone towards bowlers dominate, though. I think it maybe is a collection of all the things we've talked about. But by the end of the tournament, we might have a stronger view on that.
Yeah, sure. And then Dr. Lol, which is an interesting name, basically asked, do you think we'll see any of the gimmicks, he's called them, things from the 100, should we say, moved across into any of the other franchise leagues? 2 overs from one end, speed things up.
Well, see, I still think they stuffed up here. They shit themselves when the BBC said it had to be 3 hours long. And I would have thought the easiest thing for them would have been to just be, let's have 10 overs from one end and 10 overs from the other.
Yeah.
right? So essentially at the moment, we have some of the world's greatest cricket athletes spending most of their time and their energy running from end to end to field and long on for each fielder. Whereas like we could save time and their energy by keeping them all at the one end. I know other leagues have talked about doing that. There's problems with ads though. I mean, this is the thing. The 100 is such a specific thing. It is made to fit into BBC's frame, right? You talked before. The IPL wants it to be long. The IPL could do anything to stop their overrates, right? They go out of their way. And even the same with the Big Bash. They don't do that much to really stop the overrates the way they could. We could stop overrates tomorrow if we wanted to. It's such a ridiculous thing. So I don't think anything on that sort of point of view will change. The back-to-back overs is a really interesting thing. The having everything in tens is a very, very interesting thing going forward. I think one of the other questions you got from someone else was how are we simplifying, cricket by making it more confusing? I mean, that's easy if you have grown up in cricket. Try explaining, basic cricket things to people who haven't grown up in cricket or don't understand it.
I totally agree with this, by the way. Yeah. I went to the opener with my girlfriend and explained the 100, just counting down from 100, made the whole game so much easier to explain what it was. So, they've got 47 balls to get 63 runs. There was no maths required, really. It was only a minimal amount of maths instead of quite a lot of maths, which is
exactly. So I mean, with my kids, they found that bit really good. They'd only just learned the other kind of scoring, so they're, I think, a bit confused that there's now two kinds. But I think there's a lot there. But realistically, it is T20 cricket, just with a couple of minor tweaks. If it goes away from BBC, like if I was ITV or Channel 4 or Channel 5 in the future, and I'm willing to show 50 games, right? Mm-hmm. I'd be like, do you know what? This is working as a concept. Tell them to take as long as they want. You know what I mean? Like, at the moment, we actually have trouble getting ads. We would have trouble getting ads in because of the short breaks, right? It's like, that's not how cricket works. That's not the reason one day cricket still exists is because you get 100 ad breaks. That is legitimately the reason it still exists. In most parts of the world, the interest in one-day cricket has certainly gone down since T20 cricket. But TV companies absolutely love it. And they're the ones who pay the bills. So, the way that it currently works, I don't think there's that much from the 100 that could come across. But I would hope that, it was my friend who obviously came up with a lot of these wacky ideas. And, some of them have worked and some of them haven't. But I think when it comes down to it, that there is, I don't see it as a problem that we are trying to make T20 cricket better. I just think there are other ways that we could have made it far better. I think getting away. I just still don't think we need 5 bowlers. I really think that we should have 4 bowlers with the flexibility. I also like the idea of doing it more like baseball or NFL and having 10 batters and 5 bowlers if you're going to do it in that sort of way. And I think there are plenty of different options that they could have come up with. I would, love to have a game where in one game you use 4 bowlers, another game you use 8 or 9. Just absolutely. You've got a left arm wrist spinner that plays in every single game, but only bowls when the matchups completely suit him. That sort of stuff would be really, really interesting going forward. So I think what they've done suits BBC. It doesn't necessarily suit other T20 leagues, but there are certainly things that now that we've seen it, there are certainly things that you could use and that you could, like if you were, I don't know, what's the next league that's going to pop up? The USA League. Right?
Yeah. There's
absolutely no problem with that USA League just going, all right, well, some of this works and some of it doesn't. Let's try some other things here. There are plenty of basic ideas. The Big Bash having that late power play thing is a interesting thing. I hate it from an analyst point of view, but it's an interesting thing. That you've suddenly got someone having to come back. You'll have specialist late power play bowlers and all these sorts of things, and I certainly think that those things can help. You might have a T20 league where you allow teams to retire a player, but retire him and bring him back. So you might have someone like let's go back. I don't know why this whole episode's about Andre Fletcher, but it just Spice Man is everywhere here. But you might have someone like Andre Fletcher who for the first 4 overs is absolutely useful to you as he's smacking the pavement everywhere. Absolutely useless all the way through when the spinners are bowling. You retire him for that bit, but you keep his wicket in hand, you bring him back. There's plenty of options that we can make it. I think that, I know this is weird and it upsets some people, but we really do, if we're going to have 3 formats of cricket, which we are, we really have to make them all different. And at the moment, one-day cricket and T20 cricket are very, very similar. And I think that you can make one-day cricket slightly more like Test cricket, and you make T20 cricket far more like the best of American sports, where you have hyper specialists going up against each other. There's one guy, and all he can do is bowl mystery balls, but you can only get away with it for about 10 balls a game, because after you've seen him bowl in person 10 times, you can work him out and start whacking him back over his head, right? But you just sit him on your bench for those 10 balls a game, and he's always going to be, and everyone's going to be like, oh, it's that mystery weird dude coming on, right? So there are things that we can do to improve it. But yeah, as far as most of the gimmicks for the 100 were, I would say, incorrectly brought about because of BBC. But there's no reason why we can't continue to adapt the game. This is the thing that people are so upset about 5-ball overs. And it's like, we only just settled on 6-ball overs. Like, literally, pick up a fucking history book, anyone, and you will see that we have had so many different, I think 7's about the only one that we haven't had regularly in Test match cricket. We've had so many changes. You know, they used to have a net around the ground at one stage because they were trialing that as a new thing. You used to, when you hit 6s, you used to cross over. Like, we've tried everything in cricket. We've had so many different laws and playing conditions over the time. That is why we've got to a really good high level of cricket. So I don't want us to stop there. I want us to keep trying things, especially in leagues that I don't care that much about.
Well, yeah, and I think to some extent that is the point of the 100. You're not supposed to really be a diehard Oval Invincibles fan, I don't think.
Unless you're 12. Yeah. If you're 12, yeah. You are. You're not if you're us, right? I don't think people fundamentally understand that. It's like, I still don't really have an IPL team, right? I kind of, I was involved with RCB, and I love the city of Kolkata, but, and the Deccan Chargers had a great song. But realistically, I don't really have a team, and I probably won't ever have a team because I was there when the thing was birthed. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a completely different situation that I have for that than someone else would. And I think that, fundamentally at that point, we have to think about these things differently. And look, I've been watching a lot of last 5 years, I've watched almost as much T20 cricket as kind of anyone else in the world at that point. It's very rare for me to give a shit what happens at the end of the game. That's very much for the fans and the crowd. Well, quite often, I'm already off working by the end of the game. Because the artificial closeness doesn't mean anything to me. That's great for TV and for viewing and for exciting young fans. But for me, I'm looking at all the themes that are coming up beforehand, all the cool things that happen in the 4th over that no one else has remembered. And I'm the only one that cares about that weird field position that, shouldn't have existed. And I think that essentially is where I am coming at it from. But this is the thing that people don't seem to understand, is everyone should be enjoying this in a different way. Like, that is the whole idea of it. And I think that there is a big part of cricket fans, and not just the opposed to the 100 fans, a lot of the T20, the hardcore T20 fans are just as bad with this. Everyone thinks that you have to enjoy cricket the way they enjoy it. It's like, no. If that little old lady who only watches India versus Pakistan is still a cricket fan, and she still matters, and she is still part of us. And the person, the posh boy that doesn't know anything about cricket but likes wearing the sweaters and occasionally turns up to the Oval and gets the points in, is still helping the game, right? And realistically, what we have done, and you go to Twitter, both factions are just as guilty of this, is everyone's like, you have to like cricket our way. No, you fucking don't. You don't have to like it. I think it's one of the biggest problems with English cricket is that people think English cricket, cricket in England has to be played on a lovely village green with a red ball, and and the vicar has to be coming, and all this sort of nonsense, right? Where I grew up, some of the hardest cricket games I ever played were backyard cricket games with a taped up tennis ball, right? Go down any alley in Bangalore and have a look at the quality and the fall. I saw a cricket game in Sri Lanka on a beach where I was like, these guys are almost first class quality, and they have no idea that they're that good. And I played in first class games at Fenner's right? Well, not first class games, on first class grounds like Fenners, where, you know, there's like an 83-year-old former Essex cop with like, you know, man boobs and a big belly who can't move, right? And he's playing on and people would say, well, that's proper cricket. And I've got a guy bowling 80-mile-an-hour reverse swing on a beach in Gaul, and everyone's like, well, that's not proper cricket. It's nonsense. There are so many different ways to enjoy cricket, to be involved with it. We should be, especially, you know, people like you and I have podcasts, you know, we should be trying to open that up. And that is what the 100 has done. We both know that there are, I mean, the ECB basically smeared honey on themselves and ran into the woods naked with this. Right? They couldn't have fucked it up more. They had no idea. That first press conference that Claire Connor did, I don't think I've ever felt more sorry for someone who worked for a cricket board and probably gets paid a very good wage than I did for her. Because she was like, they were like, what about this? Yeah, we could do this. What about this? Oh, that's a possibility. Claire, do you know the regulations of this tournament? And she didn't, because they didn't know them, right? They're still making it up. And so, you know, the white card nonsense and all this sort of stuff, essentially, it's fun to make fun of that sort of stuff. And we will never stop doing it because that is part of our right as cricket fans. But what this is doing is it is completely changing the access points for people who have not felt comfortable. If you are from a non-traditional cricket family now, so no one in your family ever played cricket, you don't have neighbors or something that can take you down to the game. Perhaps you come from another country. You now have, at the very least, an easier access point when it comes to cricket. Yeah, there's a lot of stupid things that are going to be going on in the 100, and I'm sure they'll come up with, you know, I'm sure Trent will come up with more madcap things for season 2, right? That's all fine, but fundamentally, people are coming to cricket games and people are switching on the TV to watch cricket games.
Yeah, and that is the main thing. Jarrod, we've done slightly more than I expected. I enjoyed the last 15 minutes.
I don't even think you asked the question, mate. That was
No.
I might have interviewed myself at the end.
The audience experience. Is there anything else you want to cover, or do you want to let people know where to find you, or any projects you're working on, etc.?
No, I mean, if you follow me on Twitter or YouTube, most of my stuff sort of goes through those two sorts of things. I'll probably be doing a bit for the India-England Test Series. I'll be popping in and out of the 100, and then IPL and World Cup. I don't really know what I'm doing, man, if we're being honest. But
cool, fair enough.
I keep being offered work every now and again. But yeah, if you, I've got a podcast myself, of course, so you can whack that in the search engines. But YouTube's probably where we're doing the most interesting stuff at the moment. We've got a couple of cool T20 videos, or 100 videos, I suppose now, that are coming out soon. One on why players don't run off the last ball of the first innings, and another one where I've gone through the history of cricket to find players and talk about how they would have played T20 cricket. But instead of going like Viv Richards and Victor Trumper, you know, I've gone absolutely players that you would not expect to be T20 players, but would be if they played now. Like, so I've talked about Gavaskar and Boycott and Jim Fote, all the greats, Vinu Mankad. So yeah, just picked a bunch of random guys and then tried to work out, you know, what leagues they would play in. And I reckon if Boycott played T20 cricket, he would have bowled more, because he would have been that's going to pay me my money.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Pay me my money.
I think Boycott faced the first ever ball in limited overs cricket, or in limited overs internationals, didn't he? Way back.
I thought, was it Bill Lawry? Bill Lawry was the first in international, I reckon.
I thought I saw the match where it was rained on, and the Ashes Test where it was truncated, and they played a one day to.
Yeah, I thought that was Bill Lawry, but you might be confusing them, because either way, it was either the most dour player of his era or the second most dour player of his era. So they're both famous for not actually hitting the ball off the square. Yeah,
he had a strike rate of 21 in that innings, which I think was a good way to leave his mark on that particular format. Anyway, we're going to wrap up now. Just a final reminder, we're on Twitter and Instagram at The Cricket Pod. We're all over YouTube. We will be doing our India v England preview with Dan Norcross on Monday evening. So tune into that. And you can find us on patreon.com/The Cricket Pod. Thanks very much for joining us, Jarrod. And thanks very much for listening, everyone. Goodbye.